Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Politics Now. We're talking about modern politics in modern America. And today, we're going to be discussing why Biden is having a real tough time at winning over his voter base, and that is hurting him in the polls, and it is only helping Trump. So, yeah, let's get into that. So, Biden is not doing too well right now, and there's been a general trend ever since around 2016, and was exacerbated during 2020, where the the pretty much the basic support of the Democratic voter base that has been falling very rapidly. You see in 2016, 2012, black vote is at about 95%. Now it's at around like 87%, maybe 88% if you're lucky, which that's a massive drop off for black voters because black voters historically have been a very strong part of the Democrat base, but as you go down, it gets worse and worse for just general non-white voters, which make up a sizable portion of the Democratic voter base. You've gone from about 81% all the way back down to around 69, 68%. That is massive. That is a huge drop off. And if you're losing that many voters for your own voter base, that is unsustainable. And if that many people are leaving your own base and aren't supporting your main candidate, how are you going to win? Because for all of these, it's downhill. The best one is for people who are above the age of 45, but they're not exactly voting very high compared to when they were voting in 2016 and 2012. Female, male, they're all way down. Blacks are down, not all non-whites are down. Hispanic voters are especially down. They've gone down so far. Other voters who are non-white, they are even further down. And just there's so many categories of voters that usually are a pretty strong support base for the Democrats, and they are falling off like mad. And a lot of them don't support Biden at all, so they're likely not going to vote for him. And if you're having this many people just cut off you when your main candidate is running, can you really win a lot of these states? Because Biden barely won in a lot of the swing states. He was winning by under 1% in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona. In a lot of these swing states, he barely won them. He had a extremely hard time at winning them, and even when he put in all of his effort and he was polling 7 points above Trump, he still had a hard time winning that. And this is a really bad thing for places like Georgia, especially because if that black vote continues going down, well, the only reason he won Georgia in 2020 is the fact that the demographics have shifted so much that it favors Democrats now, and black votes going down for Biden. If that continues, Trump may win Georgia again, and he might flip it back to the Republicans. And if general non-white voters, they're abandoning Biden way more compared to 2020 or even 2016. If they're doing that, then Democrats, you're in big trouble. If your main voter base is dropping off this sharply, you have a major issue that is likely to continue because these these polls are likely to continue to go down and down and down. Black voters, they're probably going to continue and reach around 80%. All non-whites probably going to hit 60, and Hispanic and other probably going to hit 50. Male voters, that's going to go further down. Female voters likely still going to go down. Age 45 maybe. 18 to 44, yeah, that's definitely going to go down. Young voters, minorities, female voters, that is the base of the Democratic Party. And if those people leave your party and don't support your candidate, you're going to lose because Trump, he has a pretty strong stranglehold over his party. So you need to match that and have as much unity in your party and as much support for your leading candidate. And Biden just doesn't have that. And when it comes to the general public, he's doing terrible. He has a disapproval rating of 56% and an approval rating of only 40%. That is embarrassing. How do you have 16 points between your disapproval and approval rating, where your disapproval rating is 16 points above your approval rating? That just shows that there's clearly something going wrong, because how do you have a 56% disapproval rating by and only having a 40% approval rating? That's almost as bad as when the Inflation Reduction Act was introduced, where it pretty much did the opposite thing. It didn't reduce inflation, and more so kick-started mass inflation, and this was when it was at its worst. And he is almost reaching to that point where he is at his highest point in disapproval and lowest point in approval ratings ever since that Inflation Reduction Act era, where inflation was just skyrocketing at completely record paces. And inflation, it's beginning to creep back up again. And for a while, his poll numbers got a little bit better. They got into high single digits as inflation was seeming to go down. Well, nope, that's not happening anymore, and people are still pissed off at him, and it's likely to go right back to Inflation Reduction Act era, where he's going to be in the high teens and he's going to be in the low 20s, and there's really nothing he can do about it, because when it comes to the general election polls, he has such a massive disapproval rating and such a lack of support for his own base that in the general election polls, where Trump has never done well in them, he has never done well in them. He was up for maybe 2 weeks during 2016 and never in 2020. But now it's a complete 50-50 chance who's up for any given time. And if you look at the polls now, Trump should actually be up. If you take out the Yahoo News poll, which is a complete outlier, Biden plus 6 is a complete outlier from all these other polls. If you take that out, that Trump is up at least a point. And given that fact, if Trump is up in the polls, well, that's going to be a complete embarrassment for Biden. And that just shows Biden is so incompetent that he somehow is making someone who doesn't do well in the polls successful in the polls. It really doesn't make sense. How are you this incompetent at running your own campaign that your opponent is closing in on you and most of the time is actually above you, and you can barely get above 1 point for most of the time, and you end up just going back to zero or being below your main opponent who never does well in the polls. So this is the general election polls are generally a fight for the popular vote. And if Trump is up by decent margins, he has a chance at winning the popular vote, which, if Trump wins the popular vote, that is going to be a complete disaster for Biden, because a Democrat losing the popular vote is going to make it infinitely harder for them to actually win the general election. And given the previous polls, uh, he doesn't really have a lot of spare room to lose to Trump in a general election poll and lose the popular vote and still have enough leeway to actually win the general election, because Trump has already proven he doesn't need the popular vote to actually win the Electoral College. He's already proven that in 2016. But Biden, since he's a Democrat, he needs the popular vote to actually stand a chance to win the general election and win those 270 points and win the White House. Because if you're a Democrat, ever since 2008, you need to win the popular vote. You have the major city majority, and that means that you should be winning the popular vote. And the only way that you lose that is if your opponent manages to kick your ass or you have low turnout, which, looking at the polls, Biden is going to have both of them. And Trump is going to kick his ass, and Biden is going to have a ton of his voters either leaving his party and voting for the other guy, or most likely just staying home and not voting for him. Or hell, they might vote third party. most of the third parties that are actually that are running a competent campaign, they are left-leaning parties. Green Party, no labels, they are going to steal votes away from Biden in a lot of these states where that's going to completely screw him over. And the Green Party, his the candidate there already polls at around 4 or 5%, which given the fact that Biden is very very close to Trump in a lot of these states that aren't necessarily competitive but are still up for grabs for Trump, like New Hampshire, Maine at large, even Virginia, if he's close to those people and the third parties are stealing a ton of votes away from him, then he's going to have a tough time at winning those states. And don't even get me started on the swing states. He's going to have an extremely tough time on winning those swing states that he barely won in 2020. So you might be seeing a Trump landslide, and it's not exactly a landslide like previous years where one candidate wins most of the states and the other wins like 4 states at max. It's not going to be that landslide. It's more so going to be uh, 1320 to low 200s in terms of the electoral college and Trump +2 in the popular vote. That would be a Trump landslide. And he would win New Hampshire, Maine at large, maybe even Virginia if things go really well. And he might make places like Minnesota or New Mexico or even Oregon competitive. But if that happens, and given the polls, it kind of looks like a possibility that it could happen. Biden needs to work his ass off to actually turn around the remaining decline in his voter base and turn around his popularity because he is not doing too well. He has never been more approved ever since the Afghan withdrawal, which happened 2 years ago. And exactly 2 years ago at this point, he was at about 1 point above approval, and he was at around 50% approval. Now he is completely opposite of that, and he has a massive disapproval compared to a low approval rating, where the approval rating looks like it's about to go into the high 30s, and his disapproval rating might go into the low 60s, which, if that happens, you're going to expect a lot more of these polls for the general election. They're going to start saying Trump +3 and Trump +2 a lot more often. Even places like CNN. CNN is not a pro-Trump outlet, and they definitely lean more liberal. CNN posted a poll. It is Trump +1. That is crazy. That This is a liberal outlet that polls liberally and shows extreme bias towards the Democrats, and it's Trump +1. If that is the most damage control that they can do, it is it is absolutely terrifying for Democrats to see what the actual numbers are like when you interview the general public. Because if you do that, you might end up with more polling like Trump +2 or Trump +3. And once that Biden +6 poll gets dropped and all of these polls still remain, and likely some more Trump polls are going to come out, you're going to see Trump and Biden going to be even closer, or Trump is going to be above Biden because given the fact that the only thing really saving Biden in the polls so far is this offshoot poll from Yahoo News. That is the only thing making this even relatively close for Biden. Once that poll gets dropped and a new poll comes in, which is most likely going to be a tie, Biden +1, Biden +2, or Biden or Trump +1, Trump +2, it's not going to be Biden +6 unless it's Yahoo News or somebody like that. But Trump is going to be up and Biden is going to go even further down. And you're going to see something like this where Trump was up about 2 points, where Biden was below him 2 points. And that happened for a while until Biden got on top again, just barely. And we really need to see where things go because so far Trump is doing pretty well in the polls considering his past and the fact that he is under multiple indictments, which were kind of meant to slow him down and make him more unpopular, but seemingly just make him more popular and more well liked in the polls. And Biden, you just need to rework your campaign or get some serious shit done, because no one is voting for you at this current rate, and especially the general public, they're not going to vote for you, and they're either are going to vote for Trump or they're going to just not vote. So, yeah, if you think Trump could win, leave them in the comments below. If you think Biden can win, leave them in the comments below. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.